Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 223 of Real Blend, a podcast that is still covering Comic-Con. That one is for Sean and Sean only. My joke this week is directed at Sean because he's not here to tell it. He is on vacation, enjoying some time off after covering Comic-Con, which is always a nightmare. But I am joined, as always, by Jake Hamilton. How are you doing, sir?
I've got a question. When all of us miss the show, do we get a joke dedicated? Like, have I missed like Jake-related jokes when I'm gone? So.
No, it was more like I'm doing Sean's job, so it felt more relevant to do a joke for Sean.
Sean's got the easiest job on this show.
He really doesn't. I do have a lot of respect for how he's able to just sort of keep us moving. I mean, I'm there to, I'm there to keep us on track, but he makes it feel seamless most of the time. But also here, as always, Kevin McCarthy. How are you doing, sir?
Gabe, Jacob, good to see you guys.
Very dapper, I might add.
Again, I tell you this every time, and it's the truth. When I run out of clothes to wear, I wear my black shirt and black suit. Yeah.
It looks good.
I would say, and if it's anything like whenever I wear all black at work, I feel like I get the most comments on oh, look at Jake in all black. So I feel like it's funny that whenever you run out, this is really great for people that are just listening to the audio.
Hey, I love a good excuse to have them come over and subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Oh, there we go. There's our segue right there.
There's our segue. I will say the Comic-Con was the joke for Sean, but this podcast will be covering a little bit of Comic-Con. On this week's show, we're going to talk about Nope's box office and some of the discussion surrounding that. We have a ton of trailers to talk about, including some from Comic-Con last week. I promise we're not going to rehash Comic-Con. By the time you're listening to this, Comic-Con has came and went, and we're wondering what they're going to do next year by this point, I'm sure. But there's a lot of good stuff there that we do want to touch on. But before we get there, I will give you the usual rigmarole that if you are watching on YouTube, be sure to head down to the comments. Let us know how you like the show. Hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, all those beautiful things. If you're listening to us in audio form, check the description. I got a link to the YouTube channel there where you can join us. And of course, we are available wherever you do get your podcasts. And if you're interested in Real Blend Premium, our premium in quotes, because it's very loose and fun, feed, you can find that in the description as well. But I do want to mention up top that it's a giveaway week for the Blend game. Later in this show, we are playing #Mystery Blend, and the lovely folks at Movies Anywhere have given us 5 codes to give away with movie packs that include the new Bob's Burgers movie, The Nice Guys, and Get Out. So stick around. If you're listening to this and you haven't submitted yet, you can do so by, I want to say 1 p.m. Eastern on the Friday that this episode drops before I pull winners. So you still have time if you're an early adopter to this show.
And I'd also like to say, if you're wondering what the hell Bob's Burgers has to, Bob's Burgers is a murder mystery, believe it or not. If you haven't seen it and you're wondering what the hell Bob's Burgers is doing in the mystery sort of, umbrella, it fits.
Absolutely. So if you want a chance to win one of those codes, use #MysteryBlend on Twitter or in the comment section of this YouTube video, or you can send us an email with that in the subject line, and that'll enter you, and I'll get your message, and then we'll randomly pick you from there. Should we get started, boys? Huh?
Let's go.
Interview this week. We're going to dive right in. Jordan Peele joined us last week to talk about his film Nope. I think all three of us loved it, and I think it did pretty well. Opened up at the box office, domestic only, $44 million. But what was interesting was the discussion around that number. I think going into the weekend, people were putting it around the 45 to 50 sort of expectation. But because Us was, I forget what Us was projected to get, but it pretty much almost like doubled its expectation.
Yes. Yeah.
I think
that was such an anomaly.
People were for some reason like thinking that would happen again, which seems unfair. And so there was kind of a split between some folks who thought the 44 million was disappointing. And then I think the three of us are all in the camp of it's not. I know Sean, who's not here to defend himself, or maybe he's changed his mind. I know he had mentioned in the text thread that he thought that was disappointing. So it's a bit
divisive.
Thought
the movie was disappointing, and I feel like those two opinions go hand in hand.
Oh, that's interesting. So yes, Jake, go ahead and kick off. What your thoughts on the 44 million and what that means for original entertainment?
It's funny because I feel like I don't know if you guys remember, but Kevin and I got into such a heated debate about Us. And the final act and our thoughts on it. But it's so interesting. I feel like he and I are step for step on the same page. And I think Kevin would agree with me when I would say a $44 million opening on a $68 million budget is a great opening. It is the biggest opening for an original IP, not an IP, an original film not based on an IP, since the last Jordan Peele film. Right. And yes, Us did massive astronomical numbers, but that is far and away an anomaly that we cannot base future. I mean, you have to look at other examples like this, like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or Elvis, like movies that are targeted at adults, specifically ones that are like R-rated. I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I believe, had like a $42 million opening.
I think it was close. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is a much more accurate comparison.
When you're beating Quentin Tarantino with your third film, you're doing all right.
When you're beating Quentin Tarantino, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Brad Pitt with your third film.
Kev, a question for you. Do you think that the sort of Us overachieving is a product of the hype around Get Out? Yeah. And that Nope's sort of kind of nailing expectations on the head is because Us was kind of split. Like it didn't bring in the wave that Get Out brought to Us.
Yeah, and weirdly enough, I could have this wrong, and someone could double check. I believe Us and Get Out have the literal exact worldwide box office total.
I think you're right. Actually, I do seem to remember.
That's interesting.
Seeing that.
I'll look at that.
Weird, like it's weirdly the same. But to Jake's point, in terms of Us, Us is not a fair comparison in terms of box office because Get Out was such a massive deal. He won the Academy Award for screenwriting. That movie was well received by everybody. I think Gabe made a great point about Us being a little bit more on the divisive side. So it may have people going into Us may have been disappointed if they were expecting something on the level of Get Out, even though I think Us is incredible. I think all three of his films are incredible. I think they're all classics, in my personal opinion. And I've seen Us and Get Out multiple times, and they are equally rewarding every single time. But in terms of the box office, what's fascinating about this is that idea that people thought this was going to open to where Us opened. And I don't think any projections ever had it even near the Us opening. Also, there's a couple things that need to be stated here. As Jake said, it's the biggest opening in the past 2.5 years for an original film. That's
the huge point. Original film is important in our culture and sort of with the box office at this point.
And this is not a superhero film. It's not based on a book. It's not a prequel, sequel. Also, I was texting you guys earlier. Look at Elvis, for example. Elvis is an interesting example to me because that movie opened to 31 million. I would argue Elvis is more well known to the world than Nope is, and I would argue that Elvis opening at 31 and Jordan's film opening at 44 does show you the power of Peele's name and kind of what this film is bringing to the world. And everybody's just curious what he's going to do because it's always interesting. And like Jake and I were talking about this after we saw Nope, we had no idea where that movie was going while you were watching it. And it's kind of like, when was the last time you felt like that? I mean, I'm watching Elvis, I get that Baz puts his style into it. And
it's a different type of movie. I dug that film.
Right. But my point being is that I knew where Elvis was going, and just because of the nature of the story and him passing away and the way that we know he did. So,
and to further your point, that's kind of the case of like a lot of blockbusters these days. Like that's why we're putting the emphasis on how original it is, because a lot of blockbusters, you kind of know where they're going.
And it's important. Like that's the thing is like these box office takes about the film being disappointing. To me, it's just detrimental to the cause of the business because it's not disappointing. The movie made a really good amount of money and it's an original film, as we mentioned. But at the same time, people expecting it to come off the heels of Us. I mean, you're talking Get Out was beyond belief, huge film. Like it was a cultural moment. Like it was a big moment in terms of not just movies, but just in general. Everyone talked about Get Out. There were like memes and like bits that were being done about it. And like, it was a huge phenomenal sensation or a phenomenon. The other thing I want to mention is that we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and I'm not using that excuse in terms of box office, but we've all seen how well Top Gun did and Doctor Strange and all these films have been doing really well. But for an original film, and Peele has said this kind of in some of his press prior to the movie coming out, which was he wrote a film that he didn't really fully expect to make because he wrote it at a time where theaters, we weren't sure where the industry was going to be. So he just kind of put something on page with the expectation of probably not making it. And he was lucky enough to make it. And obviously he had the right to make it because he's a phenomenal filmmaker. And I'm so happy they gave him all this money and the IMAX cameras and Hoyte van Hoytema to shoot it. But for the film to come out on the heels of the pandemic that we're in now, and be the biggest original opening in this 2.5-year span, to me is a huge win. And I don't understand a single person's negative take on how the film was received. Now, divisiveness wise, critically, yes, people have been divisive on it, which has been interesting, and it might not have the legs.
Yeah, but it also might be a little bit of recency bias whenever we have the likes of Top Gun and then the Marvel films, and like those are a different scale. That's a totally different set of expectations. So I think maybe some people aren't really getting the full picture of like it's never going to do a Thor Ragnarok or you know.
I mean,
go ahead.
I'd also
Jake.
like to think that it's an unfair comparison between Us and Nope, if only for the subject matter. Like Us is inherently a home invasion slasher film, which are just more popular than Alien movies. Like they just are. Yeah. I know a lot of people that whenever I'd tell them about Us, they're like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. I have to go see that. And also like a lot of the marketing for Us just seemed a little bit more appealing than, I mean, I got to be honest, even as someone, whenever I first initially heard that Nope was going to be Jordan Peele's Alien film, there was a part of me that went like, oh, really? He's doing an Alien movie? Oh, okay. Like, I just don't think that Alien movies are as popular as the other two types of films that he's done. So I think that even like the subject matter, extraterrestrials, like is something that you have to get over.
But we have to understand that we're living, I'm sorry, Gabe, but we're living in a time period where we're witnessing filmmakers that, like, I always think back to myself and go, all right, which filmmakers would I have been happy to be alive during, right? And I always go to Hitchcock. I wish I could have lived through Hitchcock's filmography, been at those theaters and saw Psycho in the theater. And I'm not saying Jordan Peele is on Hitchcock's level, though I do think that Peele is one of the great directors of our time.
He still has more movies to make, but he's made 3 great ones for sure.
As he said online, he's not John Carpenter yet.
Right. Well, Get Out, I think, is one of the greatest movies ever made, and I think one of the greatest scripts of all time.
Voted number 1 this century.
Right. And so, but in terms of this, I just feel like it's so cool that we get to be living during this time period. Like we get Nolan and we get Tarantino and we get Jordan Peele, and it's like going back to Hollywood, which is a great example. I'm glad you brought up Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Quentin Tarantino is arguably a bigger director than Jordan Peele. I don't think that's an argument. I think it's a fact.
That's not arguable.
Right. Yeah. So
again, like, more movies to make.
Right. But for Tarantino to open up a film to 41 million or whatever, and then for Jordan Peele to open it to 44. Now, Quentin opened his movie before the pandemic. That was just normal movie going, right? Like everybody. But what I think Nope hit really well was it hits a younger demographic. And I was reading some of the statistics about Nope, and like I think it was like a really big deal between like 18 to 34-year-olds. And what's interesting about
that's Jordan Peele's market. Like I think that's we were comparing them to Elvis just for the recency of it, but like that's the difference that this has from Elvis. Is Elvis like is well known in that he's Elvis, but also like the people that care about that are probably 100%. Much older than the people who think that Jordan Peele is really interesting and want to go see his.
And my parents, even though Elvis is an IP, it's kind of IP, like in a way.
Oh, it is.
It's
when you're in the room pitching it, you're pitching it as if it's IP. You're bringing up all those things. But Jake, what I was going to ask, because you mentioned the being a little hesitant about him doing an Alien movie before you got a chance to see it. I was recently reflecting on Nope and thinking like, I'm officially kind of excited about anything he wants to do. Mm-hmm. Like if he wants to be like, oh, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z genre, or I'm going to do a version of like a Agatha Christie mystery, but I'm going to do it my way. Like with Nope, what Nope did was sort of more solidify his voice in a more well-rounded way than just obviously he's brilliant and it's clear that he's extremely thoughtful and he cares about what his stories mean, not only what they say, but and how he tells them. But after Nope, I'm like, give him a blank check. Let's see what he does.
I'll if he announces project number 4, and if my initial gut reaction is like, oh really, that's what you're doing, I'll think back to the fact that I had a similar reaction for Nope and just go, hey, you know what? I mean, the opening scene of Nope, without saying what it was, I remember thinking, well, I officially have no idea what the hell this movie is.
I know, right?
I'm along for the ride. I
had kind of stayed away from the marketing. I hadn't even seen the second trailer when I got to see Nope. So when
you didn't see the saucer before the movie?
No, I didn't see any of that. But when the opening scene, I was like, I don't know what this movie's about. I was like, I don't know what's happening.
What's interesting, like, and so Jake and I did the interview with Peel for Real Blend, and neither of us had seen it in IMAX at that time. So Peel talked a lot about what scenes were going to open up to the IMAX. So I went out on Thursday to see it in IMAX. That for that reason, and also to see the Oppenheimer trailer.
Oh,
and
let's finish this anecdote, but then let's
yeah.
jump right into Oppenheimer after that.
I don't even think Kevin's excited about Oppenheimer, though. I don't even think he likes Nolan.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you right now. I'll tell you
finish your anecdote, and let's talk Oppenheimer.
But seeing Nope on IMAX after Jordan explained it, and I went back and listened to his answer just because I was curious how he explained it to us. And what I loved about the Nope IMAX transitions were that they were not predictable. Like, and he says it in our interview. He says that I wanted you to not really know when they were going to hit, and then I also wanted you to get punched in the face by them when they hit you. And like, that's why he opens the film. I mean, the entire Gordy scene, that whole arc of that story, and that one moment with Stephen Yeun's younger self, that's all IMAX, and it is freaking absurdly disturbing in IMAX. Like that scene alone is already horrifying, just the sound effects of what's going on in that moment. But it's pretty wild, and I just recommend the IMAX if you haven't seen it. It is Hoyte van Hoytema. It is, and they did some really cool stuff with night shots. I have never seen night shots that looked like this, and it was really kind of a cool realm. So definitely see it in IMAX if you can, and definitely check out our Peel interview because Jake and I got some really cool stuff out of him.
I will drop a link if you're watching on YouTube. Something will fly in. Check out our interview from last week. But Kevin, you went to see the Oppenheimer trailer. When are we going to be able to see it not in IMAX? When does that usually end up online?
I don't believe, and I could be wrong, the Tenet one never ended up online.
No.
And so like what I find interesting about what I love about Christopher Nolan is like Christopher Nolan is such a big deal that his teaser trailers are events. Like a year out.
Well, they're events for us. They're events for us.
Well, no, there are a lot of people who actually
are
like us in that sense that go out to watch these films. And Nolan, I mean, for people, this is pretty cool how they did this. So this is Nolan's first movie with Universal Pictures. So Nope is a Universal movie, obviously, and Christopher Nolan's been working with Warner Brothers for the majority of his career, except for Memento, I think, and Following, or maybe Insomnia. I don't remember the studios on those. But in terms of the Oppenheimer trailer, it's not part of the trailers. It's literally attached to the front of Nope. So like you go through the entire slate of trailers, all the movies that are coming out, Halloween Kills, etc. Then they go to like that Nicole Kidman video where she's in the theater watching the movies, and they go to the IMAX thing.
Heartbreak feels good in a place like this.
Right. And then you're dropped into the actual hard drive of Nope. And right before Nope starts, boom, the Nolan trailer hits. And let me tell you right now, I have never seen 70 millimeter or 65 millimeter IMAX film black and white footage. So to see these shots of Cillian Murphy as Oppenheimer, and it's funny because I'm reading the book right now, and I'm like 100 or so pages into it. It's a really long book, very dense. And I know Gabe has the book. But what's fascinating to me about the teaser that I saw for Oppenheimer is that it captures pretty much the tone of what I'm reading, in a sense of like this triumphant and tragic aspect of Oppenheimer's life and kind of what happened, and obviously building the atomic bomb and all these things. The trailer is super effective. And what they do is you come into the trailer. I think Emily Blunt's character starts off the trailer. She's playing Catherine, his wife. And the trailer's intercut with smoke and explosions. So like you're basically hearing these voices, and then Chris Nolan obviously loves clocks and timing, so he's counting down to the moment the movie's coming out. And then also
Do you know, this is a stupid question, because whenever I saw it, I was wondering, I was like, is that the exact time? Then it's going to be the same trailer for the next audience in my theater, so it can't be the exact time.
I don't know how.
I feel like that's a stupid question to ask, but like,
no, it's not a stupid
question.
It
was so specific. So they like count it down until the movie comes out.
Well, it says, now theoretically, that's what I'm theorizing. I think the countdown theoretically is to the tagline of the film, which is the day the moment the world changed, or the day the world changed, or something like that.
Okay.
So I don't know what that timing means. I took it as, because we are a year out from the release, that it had to be a year countdown to the movie.
That's why I felt like that trailer was made for people who saw Nope on opening day.
100%.
Like, so that if you went and saw it today, the timing wouldn't work out.
But it's interesting because like the timing is still effective because it's a clock and it's a bomb. And
before we get lost in the weeds of a countdown clock, give me the vibes of the trailer. Let me know your thoughts. Where are you at?
I also have a question for you two. Have it like with the book. I have a genuine question.
I haven't read the book. Yet. I've read the first few chapters. Sure.
I'll tell you this.
I can tell you that it's heavy. I've held it.
I'll tell you this. I have gone to theaters just to see Nolan's teasers for years, and specifically prologues, things he did for like Dark Knight Rises and things like that. The prologues were always just events in themselves, but his teasers have always been cool. And I'm going to compare this to the Dunkirk one because if you remember the Dunkirk teaser, he releases them a year out. And the Dunkirk teaser ended on that incredible shot of the line of the soldiers, right, and then the bomb, and then the sound coming into the shot, and then looking up. This is in the same vein. It gives you literally a sense of, now that I've seen Dunkirk and I saw that teaser perfectly sets up the tone for what Dunkirk ended up becoming, right? And so as I'm watching Oppenheimer, knowing Christopher Nolan's use of teaser trailers and kind of how he plays with them, I'm getting a sense of kind of where he's going with this. And this is again, I could be way off base. The movie could be completely different. It could just be a really good teaser, but I highly doubt it.
The comedy.
What I'm gathering from the way he's playing with this is it's going to be insanely immersive to a point.
Who are you talking about?
But I say that because we're talking about essentially a biopic, right? We're talking about a story about a guy's life that really existed. And we know with Dunkirk, he played with time, so he made it very Nolan.
Well, he did that with Batman too, right?
Sure.
True story. True story
yeah, exactly. And Tenet and Memento, all that stuff.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
Well, Tenet just hasn't happened yet.
Right, it hasn't happened.
It's happening now in reverse.
In terms of vibe, though, it's a beautiful trailer because it's so freaking intense, and you're just intercutting between color footage of explosions and smoke and fire to this insanely beautiful, gorgeous black and white IMAX footage.
I'm curious, does that give you a sense, or do we know, or does that give you a sense of how much of it is going to be black and white? Is it all going to be black and white, or is it going to be more of sort of like Schindler's List had, like it uses color to sort of give like a pop and intensity to like a story moment?
I feel like no black and white movie can never do that again.
Well, no, I agree. I don't know that it was to that effect, but
the way Schindler's List did it was obviously with the red outfit on the little girl. But in terms of Oppenheimer, what I'm gathering, and I could be wrong, is that it's going to go back and forth. And I think my assumption, and if I'm Christopher Nolan, and I'm not obviously, and he's already made the movie, and he already has it probably in an assembly or whatever he's doing with it. If I'm Christopher Nolan, you open the movie with the explosion, with the bomb. And then you go back, and then because what the trailer makes it seem like is the explosion and the bomb itself seem to be a theme throughout the dramatics of the story, that even before the bomb would happen.
So from what I've read of the book, and Kevin, I think you've read more than I have. It's very much that moment, the bomb itself is sort of like a change. I wouldn't be surprised if like it's black and white before the bomb goes off, and then the film is in color after, because the whole kind of story in the book and the way they tell it and sort of the tragedy of Oppenheimer is that he worked so hard to build this thing.
I know, and he didn't want it.
And it, like save the world, quote unquote, or whatever. And then whenever, mankind had this power, he spent the rest of his life trying to keep us from using it. And so it's that, I wonder if that's how visually that's honestly, how he used that.
That is thematically what the trailer feels like.
Okay,
because
cool.
when you're,
I think that's brilliant.
Gabe, did you not get the? Oh, you saw Nope at a screening.
I saw Nope at a screening. I haven't been to IMAX.
So last thing I'll say this because I want Jake to speak on it too.
I just have a question for you guys.
Wait, Jake, have you seen the trailer?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Because I went and saw Nope on opening day as well.
All right, then I want to get your thoughts too, because I thought. And for people listening to our show that haven't seen it, basically it opens, you're on a black and white hat of Oppenheimer's, and it's like this beautiful IMAX shot. And then we're hearing voices from Emily Blunt. We're hearing voices from Robert Downey Jr. And we're intercutting between, again, as I mentioned, fire and then black and white footage of Oppenheimer. And it just gave me this sense of Nolan's going to play with time again, obviously. And that's the question we were all wondering going into this movie. Like, how is Nolan going to make an Oppenheimer story? What's Nolan's version of this? And
so I'm going to interject, because that's what my question is. Because obviously we hear about Tenet or Dunkirk or Interstellar, and our imagination goes nuts in terms of like how Nolan can make this, because a Nolan movie is special, right?
Right.
And a lot of times it's the big action set pieces that really set his films apart
This is
from
more
everything
intimate,
else.
it feels like.
So I guess my question for you guys is, based on however much you have or haven't read, what is it that Nolan's going to be able to, like, if there's not a ton of action in this story, aside from the bomb going off, what is it that he's going to do that's going to make this movie feel special to have that imprint of a film by Christopher Nolan on it?
That's why that's what I'm explaining. Basically, so I'm going to use Dunkirk as an example, because Dunkirk's a great example of this. So Dunkirk is a true story, obviously, right? And that I personally didn't know a ton about. I knew about it historically. But the basic premise of Dunkirk is survival. I mean, they don't win, they survive. And that from an arc perspective, that's your standard through line of the story. They're on the beach, and these incredible civilians come to capture or to help them bring them home on their boats, right? That's kind of like, again, I'm simplifying it, but that's kind of like the concept of what I'm thinking. So Nolan goes, all right, how can I make this immersive and intense and do it my way? So then you do time zones, time shifts, right? So your beach stuff is 1 week, your air stuff is 1 hour, and your boat stuff is 1 day. And then you have this fully immersive experience as all the timelines come together, giving you a perspective of what that may have been for the entire global aspect of that moment, global or the overarching idea of it, right? So because how do you bring people into a moment like that if you have 3 aspects, the beach, the air, and the boat, and how do you make it make sense? So I think he's going to play with time, and kind of to Gabe's point, I think the bomb, the detonation, because remember there were multiple things he was working on in his life before, until this moment, or so there are other things that I'm assuming there could be plenty of intense sequences where he's testing things or trying things out, and I think not just an explosion itself being like the climax of it, but I do really feel that we're going to be playing with time, and that's not really like a profound thing to say.
But you kind of mean not like, I think your larger point is
standard.
It's not like Tenet. It's not like Tenet plays with time. It's more about just trying to manipulate our perception of how the story is coming across.
I think we're going to be in a situation where, because listen, we already know the ending to the story. We already know what happens to Oppenheimer. Yeah. We already know what happens. So I think Nolan's going to have to play with it in a way where we're going to be diving in and out of different sections. He might play with things like Dunkirk, where maybe the bomb aspect of it becomes a shorter time period, and then it's interlaced in. I don't know that he
would do exactly Dunkirk, because I feel like he wouldn't want to. But I will say, before we move on, I also wouldn't mind if he just doesn't, he's just I'm just going to make a really great telling of this story with great performances and care about being compelling versus being sort of
Nolan
spectacle.
And in that sense, then I would argue it is almost borderline Schindler's List like. Well, where after a decade of big, massive summer blockbusters, I'm okay Spielberg says, I don't need to make Raiders or E.T. This is just all I need to tell.
But he's also doing it on IMAX, so there's no way he's not going to bring an immersive. I mean, if Captain IMAX to it,
but I mean, you could use, No,
I know, but
I think there's still. I'm saying I would love him to take on the challenge of how do I make an intimate, emotional story on IMAX, and how do I make that IMAX matter or make sense or feel needed. Also, do you guys remember how long Dunkirk was? Dunkirk was like an hour 39 or something like that, and I remember asking him that at the press junket, He goes, and this maybe could feed into the Oppenheimer discussion, really, which is interesting. He goes, people that found out, I'm paraphrasing him, people that found out that I was making a film about Dunkirk expected probably like a 3-hour epic, like an epic action, story about these characters. And he goes, but he kind of talked about it in a way where you don't want to exhaust the audience. You have to know when to pull in and pull out, and you have to know when to let off the gas a bit and kind of let them breathe for a second before you pummel them with more action. And I think while Dunkirk sounded like a movie that could have been a 3-hour a war film, it was an hour 40 or whatever it was. So I think Oppenheimer, on the grand scale of how big that story is, I could see him playing with that shorter time, like maybe under 2 hours. I don't know.
But the style of photography they're using to shoot that movie that Hoyte van Hoytema is using, and I don't know if it's the first IMAX black and white on those types of cameras. I think it might be. I could be wrong.
It would make sense that it would be, because before narrative it was all sort of
color.
It was all like nature documentary stuff.
There's no way this is not going to be Nolan-y, but it also is a lesser budget. Isn't it like 100 million versus like I want to say, I know Dunkirk was maybe 100 million, 150 million.
I'm seeing 100 million. I don't know who's telling me this, but that's what Google is immediately giving me.
What did Tenet cost?
Let's take a look.
And that'll give you a little bit of a scope of where he's playing with here.
Tenet 205.
Right. So we're 105 million less than Tenet theoretically. So to Gabe's
which is
point,
still $100 million for a historical biopic that's in black and white. Like as far as scale goes, if he's just telling, like I said, this historical drama, like $100 million is still pretty crazy.
I will say this, and I'll end on this. Christopher Nolan is, just remember this for a second, released a film about Dunkirk in the middle of the summer, and it crushed in the United States. It wasn't even a United States story, and we all latched on to it because it was Nolan.
I just want to, while we're still talking budget.
Okay, just one more quick thing.
Go ahead.
As I watched the Oppenheimer trailer, and Jake, I'd like to get your thoughts too. It seems like it's going to be super intense and super in your face and super immersive and super like explosive. And I don't mean that, no pun intended. It's more of just like, it doesn't feel like it's going to be a straightforward biopic. It seems like he's going to be playing.
It also, like, I will say, as a fan of Christopher Nolan, that like the second I saw the clock and I was like, oh yeah, this is a Nolan movie. And like I halfway expected like someone to lean in and be like, his wife is dead as well.
That is a theme that comes up in his films a lot, obviously. But go ahead, Gabe.
I'll close on this. So he's spending reportedly $100 million on his historical biopic at wartime potentially. Steven Spielberg spent 65 on Lincoln on his historical biopic at wartime thing. So.
You think 20 of that went to Daniel Day-Lewis, probably?
The inflation between the Civil War and the early 20th century is just insane.
On that note, these three historians are going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with. We're going to talk a little bit of Comic-Con.
Joke, by the way,
that's great.
We're not ready for Oppenheimer.
I cannot do that for a year.
Hey, we did it for Nope, and I was right. We weren't ready for Nope. We weren't.
I felt pretty prepared. I was okay.
I wasn't.
All right. We'll be right back. And we are back, and we're going to kick it off with some news out of Comic-Con that we wanted to touch on. First of all, being the incredible trailer for the Black Panther sequel that's finally headed our way. Who wants to kick off their thoughts on this trailer? Jake?
I think that is one of the best trailers that the MCU has ever put out. I just thought everything about it was just pitch perfect. The tone, starting out with the Bob Marley song transitioning into, or cover of the Bob Marley song transitioning into Kendrick, who obviously has such a great history with the Black Panther films. I really like the vibe. I like the recognition of what's happening. Obviously, we don't really know what's going to happen. We all have different theories. We've been texting this morning as to what that last shot means. I think it's Shuri is going to end up being Black Panther is my prediction. I just feel like that last shot is a female in the Black Panther suit. But I got to say, it's the most excited I've been about a Marvel project that wasn't Spider-Man, because that's kind of cheating, in a while. And I just think it's just going to be I honestly just like, it made me feel things, which I really haven't felt for Marvel in a long time. And it was kind of a nice reminder that I haven't entirely emotionally checked out. Like, I know I talk a lot about how I'm just kind of done with the MCU other than just being a casual viewer these days. But like, it was nice to kind of be reminded, like, okay, if they get the right director behind the camera and they handle it right, it can hit me again.
You mentioned the sort of being checked out, and I feel like that's a lot of some of the vibe around the MCU the last couple of years. And I saw some people talking about kind of how surprising it was to see when they announced the phases that we're going to kind of like jump through this current phase and into the next one so quickly. And the take that I saw that I kind of thought was great was basically, it's like, we're in this kind of weird COVID era. They've had to juggle a lot of stuff. Everyone's kind of like in this middle ground because they're trying to set up, the multiverse stuff. and it's not their best work, but it's interesting and it's fun, and we're starting to sort of wane, and they're like, let's just get to a new phase. Let's cut this off, and so we can get to some exciting stuff. But
so much of these phases, and I know we're going to talk about She-Hulk, but so much of the whenever they like put the phases up on the wall at Comic-Con, so many of the titles are Disney Plus series, and I just don't care about the Disney Plus series.
I think that's okay. I think it's okay. I think it's a new era for Marvel. Like, I think after a decade, they've got to do something. No, I just think after a decade, like pop culture changes. You know, I think people have been, for the last 10 years, have been like, when is the Marvel thing going to fall off? It's not that it's going to fall off, but like, I think this is them entering a new era where like we've run this industry for the last 10 years, and now they're going to do all these other side things that'll get some people's interest. But you know, the main storyline, like they're doing the whole. I think they announced a few animation projects that are like definitely not canon. Like they're before, like for the last 10 years, Marvel was like, except for, you know, the Netflix weird thing, which they finally started to fix. Everything's been like, every story has to touch the other stories, and they have to, and it has to, and we have to make it work. And it seems like now, I think the multiverse is kind of an excuse for them to be like, let's just tell stories with this IP and be less precious.
I saw an interesting comparison, and it's not me, so I don't want to take credit for it. And forgive me for not knowing who tweeted this, but the comparison was that the MCU is kind of like a restaurant now. Like, you open a menu, you're not going to like everything on the menu. You pick some stuff, you skip some stuff. You don't ever try other things. So some things work for you.
The Cheesecake Factory menu. Yeah.
Oh my God, yes. And it's getting to the point, though. It's funny now. You'd say Cheesecake Factory, my mind goes to Big Bang Theory. But you know,
when does it not?
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. But yeah, I mean, that's all I'll say, other than like with the MCU, I've gotten to a point, honestly, like Star Wars, where I kind of accept that like maybe I'm just emotionally checked out right now. And when something does come along that shows me that I can feel again, that my cold stone heart has the ability to warm up for a second, that's a pleasant surprise. And like, it'll happen probably for Wakanda Forever. And then I'll kind of crawl back into my cave like Gollum.
Kevin, how did you react to?
Yeah, well, the trailer is like, it just kind of hits a lot of things that I love. So I'm a huge Kendrick Lamar fan. Love Ryan.
Are we gonna
Coogler.
get a soundtrack for him, like a full soundtrack again? They haven't. I haven't seen anything announced.
I don't see why not. I mean, obviously Kendrick just dropped Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, and he's going on tour. I'm actually seeing him next week.
But he wrote Black Panther while he was on tour. Right, or not and wrote, but he produced it while he was on tour.
Maybe that's what's going to happen, because he's going on tour.
I would think by now it's almost done, right?
Yeah, or I don't know. Sometimes I don't know. I mean, Ryan and him probably have been working. I
hope so. I guess I'm very hopeful.
Same. But. And the Black Panther album was incredible, by the way. It's funny, like when I
honestly,
think
it was my album of the year. Like,
yeah, when I think of Kendrick Lamar, it's funny. I always go to a Section 80, and you think about Pimp a Butterfly and Good Kid, Mad City, and Damn, and then now Morale and the Big Steppers. But I always kind of leave out Black Panther. It is a Kendrick record. It's a TDE record, and it's like I know there's a lot of collaborators on that album, but like I always it is a Kendrick album. I think it is Kendrick Lamar's.
It's a Kendrick album as like a
right.
As sort of, if you zoom out, his work is just so like kind of meticulous, specific. You know, like once you get past the same way
that like, do you count the 8 Mile soundtrack as an Eminem album?
Well, it's more like from like Section 80 onwards, Kendrick's work is very intentional, and like he creates these concept albums, where Black Panther very much just feels like a fantastic, and it has its concept. The concept is
different from his normal records.
But a lot of him on it is him like doing hooks, and like he's on it a lot more than I thought he was going to be when they said he was producing it. But a lot of it is him like writing music for other people. Like The Weeknd shows up on Black Panther, and he makes a Weeknd song with The Weeknd,
right?
Versus having him on a Kendrick song.
And shout out to Baby Keem, who's I think Kendrick's cousin, who's on his new record, which is amazing. Hopefully he'll be included on the soundtrack. I mean, we're hoping. And Kendrick, I don't see why you wouldn't bring. My Kendrick
only thought
back.
is he like it took a long time for us to get Mr. Morale, and my only thought is. Was he working on that the whole time or whatever? And he kind of talks about that on the record of like what he's doing. But
yeah, he opens the album with like, I've been doing this for this many days. Prepare yourself for what's about to happen.
Right. So that's my only thought is maybe he just literally didn't have the time because he was worried about his own music, which is fair. But,
totally. True.
And what makes me even more worried is they used All Right. It wasn't Kendrick doing a new thing. You would think it would be Kendrick doing a new thing if he's writing a bunch of new stuff, but I don't know. Only one.
I'm trying to remember if the Black Panther 1 trailer had, one of the new songs. I'll have to go back and listen to it. But in terms of this trailer, obviously the transition, everything's going to be all right to all right is just a brilliant edit, and it's like emotionally. There's a whole arc just to that music piece in the trailer. Like just the music is an arc in itself. And then someone asked me this the other day, like, are you worried at all about Wakanda Forever without Boseman? And I'm like, no. And the reason why is because of Ryan Coogler. Yeah. I just have so much, and again, I would obviously love for Chadwick to have been here to be in this movie. Of course. But goes without saying. After what Ryan did on Fruitvale Station was my moment of like, oh God, this guy's incredible.
Well,
like,
it was his first movie. It was everyone's.
Brilliant filmmaker. And then boom, then Creed was just crushed it on Creed. First Creed's incredible. There's wonders in some of those fight scenarios, which I think are some of the best wonders. I think Lena Sandgren shot that. I have to go back and look at that. It's like Damien's DP. But going into this trailer, I had no concerns. I knew that Coogler was going to deliver, but the trailer exceeded expectations beyond belief. It was. I'm glad that we are acknowledging the T'Challa death in the trailers. I'm glad that's kind of.
I think that's going to be how the film opens.
100%. And I think it's important that they played with that aspect in the trailers, because we all know that Chadwick can't be in the film. And we know that. So it's like, why not just address it right off the top? Like T'Challa, the character died. We don't know how the character dies. And then now there's going to be a new Black Panther. And I think it was smart.
I don't mean for this to be an inappropriate question. How did he die? Are they going to explain how the character died?
I imagine that'll happen.
Again, I have theories, and you guys, we debated this. I really think Michael B. Jordan is going to be back. I think that if you look at,
I don't think so.
I don't think they can.
Let me explain.
I don't think Coogler would do that. Like I think that ending was way too strong.
Here's my thought. So Killmonger to me is next to Thanos is my favorite villain in the MCU, and I don't use the term. I don't like the term villain because I don't think of Killmonger as a villain, even though he does villainous things. But Michael B. Jordan's performance in the first Black Panther film, I think, deserved an Academy Award. I thought he was brilliant. He should have won an Oscar for that. It was just incredible. Because for a character that has tattoos all over his body of hundreds plus people that he's killed in his lifetime, for me to then engage with him emotionally, understand where he's coming from, and have that arc at the end is incredible. My theory is, and this is even before Chadwick passed, was that Coogler shot that ending very specifically because you come out. I know, and Gabe doesn't agree with me, but
I'll respond. Yeah.
I'll get my point out, and then obviously you can rebut, and I'm probably wrong, but Coogler comes out on a very wide shot as Killmonger falls. And I think there's a reason you do that. Now, emotionally and thematically, sure, when you're making the movie, it's more effective. It's a wide shot. It's a private moment between T'Challa and Killmonger.
I think a close up on him dead isn't respectful enough for what that character was going through. Yeah,
agree 100%. Though what that ends up giving you is a way to not really have Killmonger be dead. And my point by that is, like, yes, we see him fall. We assume he dies. I really feel like the Killmonger arc and him becoming Black Panther just to me is kind of beautiful in itself because of what happened to Killmonger, what happened to him as a child, what happened to his childhood, and kind of where he was and his right to the throne and the bloodline, et cetera, et cetera. So that to me makes thematic sense. Now, Shuri, I think, yes, she becomes Black Panther in the comics. I get that. That makes sense as well. I think we might get two. I think Shuri and Killmonger are going to play with that. But I could be wrong, but I'm just wishful thinking because I really want to see Killmonger back and I really want to see that arc for him. But I could be wrong. But that being said, the trailer is great. I'm very excited. It's emotional. They handled it beautifully. I honestly, and again, Chadwick, we all know that he shot Black Panther when he was sick, which is just, it's wild to even think about that. But I do feel that when I watched the trailer for Wakanda Forever, it didn't feel Hollywood. It didn't feel cheap. It didn't feel like it was trying to tug on your heartstrings. It felt like a genuinely emotional, beautiful way to celebrate what Chadwick and the cast of Black Panther did with that first film, and to have this beautiful trailer to me that represents kind of like how everyone feels and what we're all going through outside of just Chadwick, but just in the world right now, we're all mourning and just in general.
Yeah.
And I think the trailer really captures that. And I think it was a really smart, beautifully cut trailer that did not feel like cheap. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I have to respond to your Killmonger thing though.
Go ahead.
I think there's no way in hell that's happening. And I love and respect you. And I don't know either. Neither of us have seen this, but I think it's never going to happen.
Okay. All right.
I think it would be disappointing because, well, first of all, the way you're talking about the shot, and I kind of interjected to say that, like, I think it's shot that way because it's more emotional that way.
Sure.
And it's much more respectful to that character than to, the traditional villain shot. Yeah. But the way that movie ends, and again, if we want to talk logistics of like the giant knife that's in his chest that he very purposely pulls out to say, I just want to die. And he pulls out and he's definitely going to die. Whatever. Let's say you're in Wakanda and they have added, tech stuff that could save him. Yeah. His final line is one of the most powerful, like one of the reason, didn't it get nominated? Did that script get nominated?
Why would that line lose meaning if he lives?
Because what he says,
it's still a great line.
No, it loses meaning because it means that Chadwick Boseman in that moment betrayed him. In that moment when they had the redemption, he goes back on it because what he says is, we could still save you. Chadwick's character says, we could still save you. And he says, no. He said, bury me in the ocean like my ancestors who jumped from the ships because they knew that dying, I forget the exact line, but they said dying free, death was better than bondage. That's what he says.
I understand what you're saying.
Because he says, if you save me, you're just going to put me in jail, is what he says. He says, just bury me in the ocean with my ancestors. And so if he were to go against that and then save him and then put him in jail, it's sort of just, it ruins the beauty of that moment. What I will say is I agree with you that I want him to be in it. I want him to come back because I love that character. And I think I've always said this, that I think he could return on the ancestral plane. Like we could see Shuri talking with him about T'Challa or something. Yeah. I 100% could see that happening. That. And I think I think the fact that he would ascend to that, because there might be some sort of
cool. That's
way
a good
to
arc.
solidify his redemption with that.
Yeah.
But I don't think Coogler would do that to how powerful that moment was for the audience, for that character. And I just think that little thing, just to bring him back just because, technically you could. It just doesn't feel like a Coogler move. And I don't think Marvel's interested in doing that.
I always thought he'd come back. Even before Chadwick passed, I always thought that ending.
That's fine. I'm just saying
final to
I
me.
never have, and I really strongly disagree. But I just wanted to say that.
So wait, Jake.
Strongly disagree.
I'll ask you guys straight up. Do you believe the ending of Black Panther 1 solidifies that Killmonger 100% dies?
Based on the power of that moment, yes. Right? And it also just would feel like such a cheap surprise to bring him back.
I disagree with that. I don't see the cheap aspect of that at all. I think it would be. Remember, Killmonger his story is devastating, like absolutely.
That's why that movie's one of the better ones they've ever made.
I get that.
I think it cheapens that entire story.
Yeah. I really don't.
I agree with your
moment at the premiere.
I agree with your urge.
It's a shock moment.
I agree, like wanting that to happen because he is so good and it is such a good character.
That's probably where it comes from. Is I want him to come back because I really want to see him.
I don't want him to come back because he was so good.
Would you be fine with that ancestral plane stuff? Because that just, to me, that feels like that cool. Makes sense.
That to me sounds like the best compromise because then you still get to have him back
and
you don't.
And the serious stuff aside, as a film nerd, he's been in every one of Coogler's movies, right? And so I want him to pop up.
I have a stupid question, and I genuinely don't mean for this to be a disrespectful question, but the ancestral plane stuff in the first film was so beautiful. It was so well done. Yeah, how do you do that again without Chadwick being there?
Well, I think you're going to have Chadwick there. Not.
Well, I don't know. I that is something where I'm not really interested in speculating.
Again, I don't mean for that to be a disrespectful question, but in terms of what the ancestral plane is,
it's a good question because theoretically
he would be there.
You're not wrong because T'Challa's father was Black Panther.
Yes,
he visits his father on the ancestral plane. Okay, so there's two things here that are interesting. One, and again, this is not a comparison. I'm just using this as a way to maybe figure this out. Fast and Furious, for example, Paul Walker. They kept Paul Walker alive in the universe, right? So Brian is still alive. So they wrote around that in a way. From what we can gather from the Wakanda Forever trailer, T'Challa is definitely dead, right? So I don't know.
I think they might have even come out and said that beforehand that they weren't going to try to do something.
Know how you would do that then. That's a great question. Like now that I'm like, it's not disrespectful. I don't think it's disrespectful
I don't think it's
at all. I think it's a great question.
This is the point where I say again, I the catch-all of like in Ryan Coogler, I trust. I trust that he's going to do what feels right depending on what they have. I could see them saving that, and because I think for the audience, for the Black Panther audience, and for fans, particularly for Chadwick, if that's like a thing that they save, that they reveal. That he's in the film in that capacity somehow. I can see that being really powerful. It's done right. Like who's to say that they don't have footage that exists that they could make that work? Then great.
That's how they handled Paul Walker.
I don't imagine
on that.
That's what I'm saying is like I don't think they're going to do it. But if they do it, I'm sure that it'll be done right.
Yeah.
Ryan Coogler is not going to let that be a
I don't think anyone involved in that production is interested in disrespecting Chadwick Boseman in any way.
Again, another thing, and this is another a complete sidestepped, but it's an interesting way of how they handled something. Val Kilmer in Top Gun. Now we know that he's sick in real life. He's obviously still alive, but that was a moment that could have been really, really poorly done, like really cheap and like cheesy, and they handled it well because I think they wrote that scene well, and I think and again
didn't he write it?
Right.
Yeah. Didn't they say Kilmer? I think they said Kilmer kind of wrote this, what he wanted his role to like, what it could be, I think is what Kaczynski might have told us that. And
clearly Kilmer's still alive and that, but the point I'm making is that like it's a, but Val Kilmer is not in good health. I mean, that's the truth. So how do you handle that? So if they handled that well in Top Gun, I trust Ryan Coogler to somehow find a way to make it right. And if Chadwick is somehow going to be in the film, somehow in spirit or via older footage, I have no question that Ryan will handle it beautifully. Like it'll be like done in a very respectful way.
I will say I can't remember it. I don't find it right now. They may have I feel like they touched on this a long time ago when they confirmed that Black Panther 2 was still happening. That I think they went through and said not like how they were going to handle it, but they were like very clear of like we're not interested in CGI. We're not interested in this. Like I think they got out ahead of it, Marvel and Coogler and everyone, and they were like, our goal is to handle him, his legacy, this character, its legacy within the story as respectfully as possible. So to answer your question, I think I don't know. I doubt it. I would say no, they're not going to. But
how do you explain it? How do you explain him not being there?
Oh, see, that's what I was getting at when I said I think they're going to open with a funeral. I mean,
no. I'm talking about the scenes in the ancestral.
And they might just not go there.
Unless they just don't go.
Yeah. Like I think they'll just avoid it.
The only other way that I could see them doing it would be to have the character in the Black Panther costume, which the father wasn't in the first one.
I don't think that
you can't do that.
No. Yeah. Again, I think we're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. But
but this is a great question. This is honestly like one of the most profound questions I've heard asked about.
Profound questions?
Well, it's profound. I don't know.
Jake over here. Do you ever get that in the junket room?
The only way I think could be done really nice is that if a character were to go to the ancestral plane, they just look at someone off camera and smile, and then you cut away. Like, don't try to create a conversation. Don't try to create some honestly looking off camera and smiling tells you everything you need to know.
Wow, that's something that I am now going to be thinking about for the next few months because I don't. That's the one thing I don't think I thought about.
It's going to be Saturday night at like 3:00 in the morning, and our phones are going to blow up. Like, guys, seriously, this ancestral plane thing. What's happening?
Real quick, you're so right. That's such a big part of the first film.
Yeah. So Black Panther, Wakanda Forever trailer, amazing. We're all excited for it. And
in Ryan Coogler, we trust. We really do.
Real quickly, I want to touch on one point in the She-Hulk trailer. We won't spend a ton of time on it. You guys can mention your reactions if you like. I think it looks cute. I think this one looks a lot better than the first trailer, both from like the story that they're going for and like the CGI and stuff. I think everything looks more interesting. I'm a big fan of what are we calling him? Professor Hulk, Smart Hulk.
Hulk, Professor Hulk. I think. Yeah,
I like that character a lot. I think it's really fun and unique. I'm a big fan because you just within different lines you feel either side of that character bleed through.
It's funny.
Mark Ruffalo is brilliant and that's all great. The one thing I did want to bring up is the fourth wall break. So in the trailer, she breaks the fourth wall. And after the first trailer, some people had brought up, I don't know if they were criticizing it, but just sort of noting that that there was no fourth wall break because in the comics, she would break the fourth wall and she like beat Deadpool. I was reading she beat Deadpool to it, and it's kind of something her character is known for. But the director behind the series sort of coyly mentioned like there's a lot of surprises. So I'm curious how they're going to make that work from a story standpoint, because for Marvel, they can't just have a character who breaks the fourth wall necessarily and then not address it or not have it make sense for everyone else in the scene. And so to me, I wonder if they're going to do the fourth wall break in this series, but we're going to find out that there's some weird twisty thing that we're not expecting. Maybe they'll make it work. But for me, like just if characters start breaking the fourth wall, you know, like Deadpool's on his own island and he did his own thing. That never bothered me when I was watching Logan, you know, because it's so different. But it might bother me. Like what's gonna happen in an Avengers movie when she shows up? When we're from her perspective, is she gonna look at the camera? Like,
well,
yeah, I think you're right.
Deadpool's
an explanation.
Yeah, but maybe this is the bridge into Deadpool, because maybe this is how they're gonna work the fourth wall break of Deadpool.
Well, they've already done it. I mean, they did it in the trailer. Like, we know that it's going to happen. So it's
I'm not talking about She-Hulk. I'm talking about like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the MCU movies, we have not had a fourth wall break.
That's what I'm saying.
Right?
Yeah, it's the first time in the MCU for a fourth wall.
So I think maybe they're testing the waters, because, and I'm not saying that She-Hulk didn't have it already,
Marvel
but
test waters like that. That's a big
No. My point being is that eventually we're going to have Deadpool in the MCU, right? And Deadpool does talk to the camera.
I genuinely do not think so. I don't think it's.
Well, let me clarify. Are we going to have it?
I'm not saying that he shouldn't be. I'm saying it makes no sense.
Well, no, it makes perfect sense.
Well, can I finish?
X-Men, Professor X shows up in an MCU film. What's the difference between Deadpool showing up?
My point is he going to be in MCU? Maybe he's in the MCU, but is he in the MCU in Deadpool movies that are R-rated and over here?
Yes, they're on Disney Plus right now.
Sure. My point is Deadpool is not going to show up next to Spider-Man and talk about masturbating or whatever to Tom Holland. I don't think that is going to happen.
They won't go into the
She-Hulk
sexual
very well is already
dialogue
next to the Hulk and could very well end up next to all these other children's characters breaking the fourth wall. Like
Deadpool's definitely going to be in the MCU.
He's going to be Kevin. Do you understand my point? He's going to be in the MCU, I think. And it's MCU, and he's going to play with MCU characters like he kind of did with the X-Men stuff. But just like the X-Men, he's not going to be in the X-Men.
He's going to be like MCU adjacent.
I think that the fourth wall break in She-Hulk is going to have some sort of narrative explanation. I think that the MCU I think it might be too weird for the MCU to have one character who can look at the audience when it gets into a team up movie or what have you. And the fact that she's with the Hulk is a big part of that. And I think that's going to answer the question. The director's come out and said that there's a lot of surprises. Are you expecting the fourth wall break to be explained narratively within the TV show? Like,
yeah. In the same way that, what was it? 5-6 months ago, we were wondering why Oscar Isaac had such a weird British accent for Moon Knight. I think it's going to fall under the umbrella of just classic Marvel misdirection and not actually be fourth wall breaking, but instead.
Why would you misdirect an audience about fourth wall breaking?
Because it's famous for She-Hulk.
What's the benefit of misdirecting an audience about that?
Well, it could be anything. Like, that's kind of why I'm asking the question. Is like,
I think you get to have your cake and eat it too, because if She-Hulk is in fact famous for breaking the fourth wall, but Marvel's behind the 8 ball and that they can't actually introduce fourth wall breaking Deadpool 15 years into a universe, then that way audiences sort of get the fourth wall breaking, but not actually get the fourth wall breaking.
Right. Like, I wonder if it's going to be, again,
it's not going to be Fleabag.
But this is like the multiverse thing. Like, is it going to be some sort of weird thing where like she's looking into some they could do something weird with it. I expect that the fourth wall is going to have more than just she's a character that does it. is my point. I think she's going to have some interesting thing that maybe we don't expect. And I think the way that they've talked about it in the press and sort of teased that there's more interesting things around that. Anyway, that kind of wraps up our Comic-Con talk. And we'll get right into This Week in Movies. A fun one for This Week in Movies. Everything Everywhere All at Once, getting a re-release. I finally saw it. I love it. It is great. The re-release comes with 8 extra minutes and an intro from the Daniels. But the question I want to ask you guys while we're here is this sort of... this movie is in a bit of a predicament. It's a good problem to have where you come out in the spring and you're the surprise hit. You're the indie darling. They're the, the Top Gun of the sort of art house theaters at the moment. But award season is a long ways away when you release yourself in spring. And so you've got to maintain some sort of momentum because, as we know, it's not really about who's the best. It's about who has that momentum. So how much of this do you see as, that campaign, them really trying to stretch this through? TIFF is in less than a couple months, which is kind of like the beginning of the award season for a lot of folks. How much of that do you think is influenced by them trying to get this through the end of the year in the zeitgeist?
I think Michelle Yeoh deserves. I think right now Michelle Yeoh deserves the best actress award right now out of anybody that I've seen. My answer to your question
I think
is
who else I would put in the actress category. But yeah, she feels like the standout.
Yeah, incredible.
Do you think
Could you imagine if she won the Oscar for that? That'd be incredible.
She should win the Oscar for it.
Yeah.
It's like one of the most incredible performances I've ever seen.
Well, let's talk the Oscar. Let's just say it has.
I do think it's too early for a re-release. To answer your question,
is it too early, or is this just a good time for them to fit in before?
I mean, okay, depends on what their intentions are. Are their intentions to make money, or their intentions to ramp up Oscar buzz? Oscar buzz.
I'll tell you exactly what it is.
It doesn't get ramped up in July. If they were going to do that, they should have done it in January when when the ballots actually go out.
So if you look at, I'll tell you exactly why they're doing it. Right now, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Actually, they just never mind.
Talking box office?
They were at 95 million when I last looked. Now they're at 107. So I thought they were going to be doing it just to pass 100 million. But they already passed.
No, I think to your point, Jake, I don't think this is going to be the last time. Maybe re-release is wrong for that, but I don't think this is going to be the last time we see them pushing this movie through the end of the year. This might just for whatever reason made the most sense for them. And maybe to your point,
but then what early, other than a traditional campaign, it's already available on VOD. It's it's getting its shot at a re-release like come January.
Well, let me ask more directly then. What are its chances? Do you think it's going to maintain it? Do you think it's going to be in the conversation, or do you think that there's a chance it falls off after everything comes out?
I think it gets a picture nomination. Okay. I think Michelle gets an actress nomination.
It has to get an original screenplay, right?
Yeah, I don't know how it doesn't get screenplay. I don't know how it doesn't get editing. I think, and it's also the kind of movie that I think Oscar voters think makes it look cool if they nominate it. I think it's a good look for the Academy to nominate a movie like this. The tell in terms of how seriously they take it as a contender, I think will be whether or not the Daniels get a director nomination. I think that is because there's a giant difference between being one of the 10 Best Picture nominees and being one of the 5 Best Director nominees.
That's tough.
And we've got now granted, we did just learn moments ago, as of this recording, that one of the big director contenders for this year is not Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon, moved to next year. So that's one less name the Daniels have to worry about. But it's never, look, we're in July right now, and all of us are looking at, movies like The Fabelmans and
we're barely in July right now.
It's always the movies that we haven't heard about yet. Like, in July, I'm pretty sure in July of 2021, none of us were having conversations about Coda. None of us were having conversations about, Power of the Dog.
Coda was early. Coda was a spring.
Coda was August.
Was it really? I thought we talked about that really early.
I did the junket from Florida.
We weren't having conversations that it was going to win Best Picture.
Yeah, it was just like,
we just thought it would be
it was early in the year. I'm sorry, Gabe. It was early in the year because it was a Sundance film.
Oh, okay, so that's why. So Sean saw it at Sundance, and he was praising
but
it
in terms of, I think when it hit Apple and when we did the junket, which I know junket is a selfish marker to use for the movie, but that makes sense.
Kev, you were going to say something. Did you have a thought about it at the Oscars before we move on?
I think right now, I think Michelle deserves Best Actress.
Yeah.
It's the best performance I've seen from anybody this year. So I'm all
go
in.
check it out. If you have not, go check it out again.
Nope was my number. Everything was my number one. Now Nope is. So
yeah,
just 2 originals. 1 and 2. Yeah.
Go see Everything Everywhere all at once if you can. Resurrection, a limited release, hitting theaters. DC League of Super Pets. Has anybody seen DC League of Super Pets? Another two-hander from The Rock and Kevin Hart. In a way,
I saw it. Yeah, I saw it.
How is it? Looks cute. Looks fun.
I thought that's exactly it. I thought it was very cute. It was very fun. Look, it is a movie that looks at the world of the Justice League through the eyes of dogs. Like I feel like most people who listen to this podcast can at least watch that for an hour, 40 minutes, and on the other side of it go, yeah, it was really cute. A lot of very self-referential Justice League DC humor. Even the
controversial or just like referencing the.
No,
because my next question to you was going to be: are you disappointed that it's not in the Snyderverse like everybody?
I mean, it's. I picture all the characters in the Snyderverse have dogs.
Again, Sean.
There's a quick joke where Batman, who's played by Keanu Reeves, says, Batman's on his own, except for Robin and Commissioner Gordon and the IT team. And the camera keeps sweeping around, and every time it sweeps back to Batman, he's listing 2 or 3 other people who Batman helps him with. And on the last swoop around, the last thing you hear him say, and whoever Morgan Freeman played. Like, just it's like kind of sort of very self-referential.
Sounds
jokes
like Deadpool.
Honestly, it was to me the degree of humor not as good or as sharp, as witty or as deep, but almost like a Lego movie where it's like it's very aware of the universe that it's kind of making fun of in a way. It's very cute. It's cute.
I like it. I'm interested in this one. It looks fun. It'll need to hit me at the right time, the right weekend whatever.
It's a thing. Look, I always look through and kid movies in particular. I'm a 34-year-old man who doesn't have kids. I always look through it the prism of a 34-year-old man, but I also try to think of it in the terms of like, if I had kids or I had like nieces or nephews and I brought them to go see this, how torturous would it be for me to sit there for 100 minutes? And I would very much enjoy myself if I were a parent watching this. Like my dad would have loved to take me to see that as a kid.
All right. Kev, you haven't seen this one yet, right?
I have not, no.
What did you think of Vengeance, which is opening wide this week?
So this is directed by BJ Novak, who I guess, from a director standpoint.
The Office fan or fame?
Yeah, he did 5 episodes of The Office, right, Jake? I think he directed 5 episodes of the show.
I think he wrote a ton. He wrote a ton of like from season 1 on. Like he was on the show of The Office. Yeah, he was Ryan.
No, I know he was Ryan, but I'm saying, but directing wise, I think he only did 5. I could be wrong.
Yeah. Most of them got a shot at directing, but yeah. I mean, he mostly came on as writer / Ryan.
Right. And so Vengeance is kind of meta aspect of our podcast is it's about a podcast. But essentially what happens is at the beginning of the film, we meet BJ's character and he's talking with John Mayer. Right. I guess John Mayer is playing himself in the scene.
Interesting.
Jake, if I'm wrong on that.
Yes, he played himself. What you like, that was never made clear to me. It wasn't until I saw something on Instagram today where they said something about the movie where like, oh yeah, John Mayer plays himself. And I was like, I honestly didn't get that. Like, I saw an interview with BJ Novak where he said like something about his character hanging out with John Mayer in New York. And I was like, oh, I really just thought it was John Mayer playing his friend. It was never made clear to me that it was supposed to be BJ's character hanging out with John Mayer.
Same. So the film opens up and it's just these 2 guys like talking about all the different women that they have in their lives and like using dating apps and dating 6 or 7 different women at one time and just completely oblivious to the people that they're meeting up with. There's just more of like a sexual thing. And one of the women that BJ Novak's character met on an app ends up dead in Texas. And so but BJ hadn't really kind of the character hadn't kept in touch with her. They kind of just hooked up or whatever, from what I can gather from the story. But he gets a call randomly from her family because they all thought that him and her were actually a lot more serious than BJ thought they were. Like she had photos of him on her wall, we learn later on why that was the case. But he goes to Texas because they ask him to come there to go to the funeral. And while he's there, he learns or thinks he learns that there may be a murder mystery here. that she may have been murdered, because the official statement is that she died of an overdose. But her brother, Boyd Holbrook's character, believes that there was a murder. So BJ decides to start a podcast about her story and the investigative aspect into her murder, or quote unquote murder. And it's interesting. It's thematically a really fascinating movie, just about taking chances and doing things you might not want to do, and then realizing what the world you might find yourself in, or the people you might meet along the way. And it is, I would argue, a commentary on getting off of our phones and the dangers of these apps, and how minuscule these interactions end up being with these people. And it's a really interesting dive into that. And I want to shout out Phineas O'Connell, who scored the film, who's Billie Eilish's brother. She obviously he won an Academy Award.
No relation to our Sean O'Connell.
Right. No. But
are we sure?
True.
Yeah.
I've never asked directly, but I assumed he would have brought it up.
You know what they say when you assume, Gabe? Makes an ass out of you.
Phineas won the Oscar for No Time to Die. Obviously, him and Billy won the Oscar for that. This is his first score, though, and it's really great. It's a great score, and he's a really brilliant musician.
Does it feel like music, or does it feel like score?
Score.
Yeah?
It's a composition.
Nice.
It's definitely a score, for sure. It's definitely not because Phineas is a brilliant writer, and he's a really, really amazing producer, but he actually did a score for the film.
Kevin, I've got to interject. You are sleeping on the most important part of Vengeance.
I haven't finished yet, but go ahead.
Oh, just that it is a love letter to Whataburger.
Oh, is it really?
It is. It is a love letter because it's always there.
Yeah, Kevin was saving that for last because he really wanted that. He really wanted to
That's
focus.
why he was going to just give it a terrible review.
He's
like everything about this movie's great, but the Whataburger thing really ruined it for me.
The Whataburger thing was funny, for sure.
But Kev, to wrap up your point, sorry, go ahead.
No. I just wanted to say, I think the film is a solid directorial debut. I don't necessarily love the ending. And I won't go into too much detail. I just don't believe, based on what I watched, that characters would make decisions like they did at the end. I think Jake agrees with me on that. But in terms of the filmmaking, it's really beautifully shot. And it's a great story, and it has a lot of great thematics that will definitely stay with you, and lines that are really fascinating. But also, we judge people all the time in our lives. And then when you get someone behind closed doors and really start to meet them and understand who they are, there's so many great scenes in this film where you as an audience member pass judgment on a character, as BJ's character does. And then they get in a room and it's like, oh, that's the real individual. It was kind of, those moments were really, really cool. I also thought Ashton Kutcher gave a great performance. It's probably one of the best performances of his.
I didn't even realize he was in it until you mentioned that.
So great in it. There's a really, really interesting way he delivers his dialogue that I thought it's a really good performance. Very interesting character, a character that I probably would want to know more about, to be honest with you.
Cool.
I would dive deeper into him. But it's a really solid directorial debut, and I thought BJ did a really good job with it. I think at times it was a little too much on him. I felt like, as a director, you got to know when to keep yourself off camera and on camera. There was just moments where it felt a little bit like me a little too much. But
did you give it a star rating yet?
Probably in the 3.5 or 4 range out of 5.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Jake,
and then there was a Whataburger whole thing,
which brought you down half a star.
Yeah. There you go.
Jake, where are you at on Vengeance?
Yeah, I really loved it. Biased in the sense that so much, aside from being a love letter to Whataburger, it's a love letter to small town Texas, which is very much the kind of town that I grew up in. I know when to clap at Deep in the Heart of Texas, which is a part I know. I know what bless your heart really means. I know what Whataburger tastes like. So much. There's so much little fun Easter eggs about small Texas towns.
But it still really works, even if you aren't
very
from there.
much so, very much so. Yeah. Because BJ's character Ben is kind of the audience who's not from Texas. I just in the minority, in that I'm more related to the family that's there. That being said, another point that I thought was really interesting that the movie makes is kind of how with our culture's recent, within the last 10 years, obsession with true crime documentaries and true crime podcasts and just the whole concept of true crime, how borderline, and just not to get too political, but just in terms of conspiracy theories and stuff, that we can't just let something be. Something, it's always got to be, someone can't just die. It has to be because we were so ingrained in this world of true crime and we're so convinced that everything's a conspiracy and everything's got like a deeper motive to it. It has to be 8 episodes to tell the full story, that like no one's convinced that like their story is boring, that their story is the one that's not special. Everyone, I saw a meme one time that said, one day I'm going to die and it's not going to be an 8-episode Netflix documentary. And it's just kind of like, that's kind of what this mentality of this is. And that's what his podcast is this small town that can't accept that like maybe someone just died and maybe it's not special and maybe it's just a death. It sounds terrible, but like just a death, it says a lot. And I think BJ's a really strong writer. Yeah. He told me during the junket and it makes sense that like the person he's learned most from is working with Quentin on Inglourious Bastards. And when you look at someone who very much knows how to balance director, writer duties at the same time. So I thought it was really great. The degree I laughed at the Whataburger stuff was just because I so wish the 4 of us could have been in that theater together. It's just brilliant. Yeah.
And Jake, you're with me. And again, we're going to keep this vague.
Yes, sure.
My only real big problem, and I can't shake this, and that's probably why I didn't go a little higher with my rating, is I don't believe the arcs were earned.
There are character actions in the final act that seem so out of character. I thought it was a dream scene.
Same.
I thought it was like a fantasy where I thought, okay, we're going to cut back to reality. And then I remember pausing and going, oh, you're really telling me that character did that thing.
I will cut you off there.
Yes, I'll stop there.
Too many details.
Yes.
If that's not a selling point, I don't know what
but
is.
Now I want to find out what the hell they do.
Right.
So Vengeance in wide release. It sounds like you guys recommend it. Jake, did you give it a
I'd give it a 4 out of 5.
That's a great rating.
Yeah.
Pretty great.
Yeah.
That brings us to this week's blend game. Which I will remind is attached to a giveaway. So if you're hearing this early enough, 1:00 Eastern on Friday of this episode dropping, use hashtag Mystery Blend for a chance to get a movie pack from the lovely folks at Movies Anywhere. Mystery Blend is kind of vague. We're kind of centraling it on, or putting it around like a films with central sort of mystery, that sort of plot that's pushing it forward. It doesn't necessarily need to be a dark, suspenseful murder mystery or what have you. So a lot of options there. And with that, Jake, what is your pick?
Well, since it doesn't have to be a dark, suspenseful murder mystery, I'm going to go with a really feel-good, family-friendly mystery, and I'm going to pick Seven. Which I had a little misdirection there.
Get grandma together.
Get the whole family together. Like find out as a family what's in the box.
What's in the box?
Just like Christmas, like Christmas mornings.
What is in the box? That's the tagline.
What is in the box?
With the family, you should rewatch the lust scene like 3 or 4 times just to get that one.
Yeah. Well, there's a cut on the DVD that just replays the scene. You have to go back and rewind.
Right.
It's the family cut. The family cut.
The family. Well, they actually show you the murders in that cut.
Yeah. I've spoken extensively about this movie, so I won't go too far into it, other than to say it's just such a brilliantly tight film, not a wasted scene. This sounds like weird to put these 2 words together, but the cold chemistry between Morgan Freeman's character and Brad Pitt's character, I think, is just absolutely phenomenal. I'm really bummed that we haven't seen them back together in anything, that like they haven't found a way to be back in the same movie again, because I think the 2 of them together are just absolutely phenomenal. I love the nondescript generic locale, like this idea that it is this rainy, nameless city. You never find out what city it is. Even when they're leaving the city, it just says city limit. It never says what. It's just this, because this idea that it could be anywhere, but it also
now if the Russo brothers had directed that movie, they would have said, "This is the city you're in.
Here's where you're at."
Yeah, you're in Cincinnati.
Yeah. No, I do like that too. I like that too, actually. But like I love that like they drive out of this rainy city and all they have to do is drive for like 20 minutes and they're in the desert. Like I love that the geography throws you off and makes no sense. That's part of Fincher's sort of masterstroke of what he does. You're always a little on edge. He always keeps you on edge. Yeah. I love that, look, to separate the film and the role from the actor. I love the reveal of Kevin Spacey. I love his monologue at the end. And to wrap up, it's funny to tie back to Vengeance. Characters make drastic choices at the end of Seven.
That makes sense, though.
But like by the end of the movie, you just go, yeah, I get every single one of those decisions. And it has what is probably my favorite final line in a movie, which is Ernest Hemingway once wrote, "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for. I agree with the second part." And then it cuts to black.
I always thought the final line was, why was 6 afraid of 7?
Oh my God.
7, 8, 9.
7, 8, 9. I always thought that's how they ended that movie.
And then it's just Morgan Freeman going,
oh, you know what? Maybe I've only seen the family cut. I think that's how they end the family cut.
The whole time Kate's going, what the hell are you doing? Gavin Spacey.
That's a fantastic pick. And I think one a lot of folks at home are going to pick. Kevin, where'd you end up for Mystery Blend?
I went with Martin Scorsese, Shutter Island.
Ooh, great.
I need to rewatch
this poster
movie.
for that the other day, a fan poster that was like the top of it was DiCaprio's head, and the top of his head was removed, and the top of his head was the island. Yeah. And it was just, I was like, oh my God, I need that poster. I'm sorry, I interrupted, but like,
Kevin, I want you to go. That's funny that you mentioned this. For like months now, that movie keeps popping up. Whether it's I see it randomly or I think of it randomly, I've been dying to rewatch it. I just haven't made time.
Oh, now you got me in the mood to rewatch it.
Yeah.
Damn it. I'm sorry.
No, Dennis Lehane though, and like also, maybe I'm wrong on this, and like someone could let me know. I don't think he has a score in that movie. I think it's all just classic pieces of music.
You're right.
But I thought was an interesting choice. Shutter Island for me was one of my favorite mystery experiences ever, because when I saw Shutter Island the first time, I did not read the book, so I did not know the twist. The twist in that film is so...
Which we'll save for folks who maybe haven't seen it, because it is a really great twist if someone hasn't seen it.
The twist is mind-blowing. Yeah. Well, I guess I'll have to dance around this, because the reason why I chose this is because of the twist, but I'll keep it vague.
You can go as far as that, yeah.
Basically, Shutter Island is a mystery in itself, right? So what's presented to you in the film is that DiCaprio and Ruffalo are on a boat headed to the island. They're trying to solve some type of mystery, correct? Like, we can keep it in that vague department. But on the second viewing, once you find out what's really going on, that film plays completely differently. So what I loved about it was the mystery of the first viewing, not knowing what was really going on. And then the second viewing is a mystery in itself, because as you watch the film, knowing the twist, pay attention to all the people who are in the scenes. So it's hard to talk. Not to talk
I think
about
you're
twist.
saying as far as I think that's far enough. Is saying that it changes when you see it. I think is part of the benefit.
But I think one of the things that's important to note about the Shutter Island twist is that what it does is it changes every single scene in the film. Not a single scene is the same once you know what's happening. Right. There's a scene where we're sitting at a table with Ruffalo and DiCaprio that I think is one of the greatest scenes in the whole film on the second view. Watch Ruffalo's face in that moment as they're like talking to people and they're interviewing people. It's honestly, it's one of Scorsese's best executed films, just in terms of just sheer incredible immersion into this character and kind of what he's going through. And so to me, the mystery of the first viewing was awesome, but then I got to become part of the mystery on the second viewing, which made it even more crazy. So I love that film, and I still think that DiCaprio in the water with his kids and the way he cries in that scene, I have never seen anybody go like it. Just I've never seen it.
He does great work in water, as we know.
Brutal. It's such a brutal performance, man.
I'd like to add another thing that Scorsese does with that movie that is brilliant is, in the same way that we talk about this with The Father a few years back, is that Scorsese makes you think you're going crazy. I remember the first time I saw it, because I did the junket in New York, and there were moments where I thought, is Scorsese getting sloppy? Like that glass was full in the last shot, and or like that pair of scissors was in his right hand, now is in his left. Like, is Scorsese losing it? And it's really it's purposeful. He convinces you as an audience member that you're seeing things that you're not seeing, or like you question what you saw. That, like, to me, that's even more impressive, is that like it's not even like fun hidden things in the frame. He makes you as an audience member think, I'm losing my freaking mind. Like, what is happening? And I think that is beyond that's beyond filmmaking. That is cinematic manipulation in the best way.
And your journey with that film is so fascinating, because it is like the first time you watch it, you are DiCaprio trying to figure out the murder. But the beauty of that again, being vague, is that the twist is that
sort of, yes. We're dangerous. Yeah. You guys are every word you guys get dangerous. You're like, what if I explain a little bit more? I'll cut you off there. That's a great pick. I was gonna watch my Prey screener tonight, but now maybe I just want to watch.
Dude, Prey is awesome.
Oh,
it's not Shutter Island though.
You can talk about Prey, right? Yeah, we can talk about Prey.
August 5th.
I've heard it's great. My pick, and I got to cheat because my pick is in the pack that people can win.
Wait, can I predict it? I think I know what it is.
Out?
It's Bob's Burgers, isn't it?
I still haven't seen Bob's Burgers. No, it's not Bob's Burgers. It's The Nice Guys. It's The Nice Guys. This is such a broad...
I thought your pick was going to be Knives Out. I really did.
Oh, you meant Get Out? Oh, you thought my pick was going to be Knives Out?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Until you told us it was in the pack.
Yes. It would have been up there. I picked that recently is maybe why I'm avoiding it. There's a million movies I could pick in this. People have heard me discuss how, these change every day when we're talking favorite. But I love The Nice Guys. I'm still putting this place together, but the poster over supposed to be on the wall. It's not. It fell off, and now I got to put it back.
Cast, right?
Yes. This artist did this awesome piece of that. I love The Nice Guys. I think its central mystery is really brilliant. I think that Shane Black has fun with that genre, and his cast is amazing. And the tone of it I find extremely unique, where you can have this. When I rewatch it, I typically give it enough time where I don't totally remember all the mechanics of the mystery. I don't totally remember what's revealed and how it ends up, because it is better whenever you kind of don't know what's going on. And the fact that he can give you this sort of this central mystery that keeps you guessing and is intriguing, and it is at times feels like tangibly dangerous with these kind of like slapsticky characters, I find brilliant. And is a unique tone that I don't really see in a lot of films, and is why I love it. Is its tone alone. And people have heard me recommend The Nice Guys before. If you for some reason have not seen it, it's an absolute must see. One of Gosling's best. He's really great in it. But I will. That's all I'll say on The Nice Guys, because I want to give time for Sean's pick. Sean could not be here because he's on vacation, but from what I'm told, he's going to send me his pick. So without further ado, take it away, Sean.
Hello, my wonderful blenders. I had to drop off the grid after San Diego Comic-Con and escape for a little while, but I was not going to leave you guys without sending in my blend game pick. We are playing Mystery Blend, and it's cliched, and there are 1,000 different things you could choose, but I have to go with Bryan Singer and Christopher McQuarrie's ending to The Usual Suspects. One of the greatest reveals of all time, if not the greatest. The entire time you're putting the entire film together, you are trying to figure out who is Kaiser Soze. Clues pointing in every single direction. The reveal of who it actually is and how Chaz Palminteri puts it all together is just a chef's kiss of storytelling. Every part is played perfectly, sending you in a million different directions. It's the type of movie that you can go back and revisit multiple times. Learn more things about how Kevin Spacey in that part is putting the mystery together and playing off of Chaz Palminteri and all the things that are in his background. Even all the guys who are part of The Usual Suspects and the way that they tip their hand to maybe them potentially being Kaiser Soze as part of the mystery. It's a detective story without really telling you that it's a detective story, just putting together this sort of criminal history that's masterfully told. At the time, we didn't know how good Christopher McQuarrie was as a screenwriter, and of course he goes on to become an incredible director in not only Reacher and The Way of the Gun, but the Mission Impossible films that he's doing right now. I really want him to get back to doing some original screenplay, maybe trade off the way Rian Johnson does between franchise films and then writing his own original stuff, because I think he's that good of a storyteller. But if we're playing Mystery Blend, knowing that you could go a million different directions, I'm going to go with The Usual Suspects. So I hope you had fun with the boys this week. I'll be back next week, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. Thank you, Sean, for writing it. I still don't know what Sean's pick is, but I bet it was a good one. Or he never sent it to me, and you've just seen this. I sound insane.
That's the mystery.
I sound insane. Thank you, everyone who played along. Again, if you're listening to this early enough, you can still use hashtag Mystery Blend on YouTube, on Twitter. Email us in before I pick the winners of our 5 packs. And stay tuned, because I think we're going to do another giveaway. So there's going to be more opportunities. But for next week, our blend game is going to be Sandra Bullock blend. Boys, can you believe we've never played Sandra Bullock blend?
It was just her birthday yesterday.
It was just her birthday.
I have mine immediately.
Good. Tune in for next week. Yeah. Also write in with that. Also write in with your Sandra Bullock blend picks. And we'll read them out on the show next week. Sean should be back. All three of us should be back. It'll be a full cast of characters, I believe. In the meantime, you can sign up for Roblin Premium. We got a mailbag coming your way on Monday morning. You can follow Jake at Jake's Takes, Kevin at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell. I'm at Gabe Kovac. The show is at Real Blend. And until next time,
hockey pads and Deadpool.
Not Killers of the Flower Moon.
Killed the Flower Moon.